The anime started with the Demon Lord, who summons his glorious 4 elite generals of his army. The first to be summoned is Almandra, the Inferno Assailant. The second is Gnome the Bastion. The third is Sylphid, the Archmage of Storms. And the fourth is someone that the Demon Lord declares will become part of his army's strength and conviction. It is his newly chosen elite general that will help him conquer the world. He is a soul summoned from another world that will have powerful control overseas. The Demon Lord finishes summoning his elite general and announces the arrival of Danuski, the overseas manager. A quick flashback shows that Danuski considered himself to just be an insignificant salaryman. He was filled with hope when he began his first job, but all that quickly went into the dumpster. Danuski started seeing that his colleagues were all getting promoted while all his work went unacknowledged. One day this got even worse when he was given orders to transfer overseas. All his co-workers pitied him because he was sent to what is considered a graveyard for losers. Danuski tried to remain positive, but he quickly found that the power plant he was sent to was a mess, and the higher-ups didn't care. There was a shortage of equipment and manpower, but his boss told him that they couldn't waste more money. Danuski lost several of his workers, but he always believed that he could make things work, so he continued to work hard. The challenges were chipping away at his life, but eventually things improved and the workers came back. All his hard work was finally paying off, as the power plant's success was beginning to skyrocket, but Danuski was horrified to hear that he was being transferred to another country again. He questioned what he was doing all this for, but this was when his life was ended by Scooter-kun. Back to the present, Danuski freaks out after realizing that he's now in another world. He's shocked to learn that someone knows his name, and the Demon Lord reveals that Danuski is one of the elite generals of his army now, and he is the great overseas manager. The Demon Lord has Danuski's entire work history, and he was very impressed by it. He saw how Danuski managed to rebuild the failing power plant, and decided that he would be worthy of the Demon Lord's army. Of course, Danuski is confused and terrified because joining the Demon Lord's army is not a career path he ever considered. Instead of climbing the corporate ladder, this is more like falling off of it completely. The Demon Lord senses his hesitance, so he reveals all the great benefits that come with being one of his elite 4 generals. Danuski will receive the compensation and authority equivalent to the department managers of his old world. He will get to choose his subordinates, and he will even get his own office. The benefits are of course amazing, and Danuski really has no reason to complain. The Demon Lord even offers to send him back to his old world if he declines. Danuski is in awe of the Demon Lord now because he even respects worker rights. Danuski becomes depressed when he thinks about how poorly he was treated at his old job, and says that he wasn't valued by his boss at all. He could never meet their expectations, and those who couldn't contribute to the organization were considered trash. Because of this, Danuski has come to think of himself as trash, so he tells the Demon Lord that he's not worthy of the Demon Lord's army. Danuski continues to put himself down, but the Demon Lord won't have any of it. He calls Danuski's old bosses fools, and says that fools only value what they see. They pay no attention to the work done behind the scenes. The Demon Lord, on the other hand, has seen Danuski's work, and he thinks that he can bring out the Salaryman's full potential. He says it's not up to Danuski to determine whether or not he is worthless, nor is it up to his old bosses. The Demon Lord says that it is he who will make that decision because he's the one that needs Danuski. He then explains that the Salaryman has 2 options: have his life ruined by working for fools, or serve the Demon Lord and aim for sky. Danuski isn't sure about what to say, but he's interrupted by Almandra. She has an objection as she can't see how a weak human will be able to serve as one of the 4 elite generals. The others object as well, and Danuski agrees with them. The Demon Lord shows his great leadership as he takes their options into consideration, and Danuski is shocked when the Demon Lord decides to test him. Danuski desperately tries to explain that he has no powers, but the others are fired up by the idea. Almandra has heard that humans from other worlds have special powers, and she wants to see it. She tests Danuski with her most deadly blow, and he realizes that his death is inevitable. Luckily for him, the Demon Lord stops the crazy fire girl. She angrily wants to know why she was stopped, so the Demon Lord reveals that Danuski just fainted from shock. It's pretty clear that he's just an ordinary human, and the Demon Lord explains that Danuski doesn't have any powers. Of course, this makes the others object even more, since an incompetent human will never be accepted by an army full of powerful monsters. There is a power struggle between demons and demi-humans of the army, and Danuski would get eaten alive. Gnome blames the demons for the power struggle, but Almandra blames the demi-humans. There is a clear struggle among the ranks, but that is exactly why the Demon Lord wants Danuski to join them. He doesn't want Danuski for his power, he wants him for his resourcefulness. Just then, Danuski regains consciousness while still thinking about how Almandra's kick will destroy him into smithereens. The Demon Lord says that Danuski doesn't have to worry. He doesn't want Danuski for any physical abilities, and he will give the Salaryman a fitting exam. This is still pretty terrifying as Danuski realizes that this is an otherworldly entrance exam. The Demon Lord goes into details and explains that his army is trying to make pacts with several tribes surrounding their land. Unfortunately, negotiations with one tribe in particular isn't going so well. That is why Danuski's exam will be to successfully make a pact with the Minotaur tribe. With Danuski's great negotiation skills, he must gain the Minotaur's trust and welcome them into the demon army. Danuski is shocked by this sudden change in his life, and the Demon Lord tells him to ask Almandra if he has any questions. Unfortunately, Almandra doesn't like him very much, and she assured that Danuski won't pass the exam. Of course, our boy is lacking in the confidence department, and simply considers himself to be a useless salaryman who can't use magic, and has no special ability. However, he has never worked for someone that actually needed him, so Danuski really wants to live up to the Demon Lord's expectations. Just then, they arrive at the room where the Minotaur chief is staying. Danuski is terrified by what the huge door means, and Almandra warns that Minotaurs are ferocious. She tells our boy that he needs to be cautious, or he will be trampled to death and turned into a human carpet. Danuski tells himself to do his best, but that all falls apart when he sees how terrifying the Minotaur is. Truly is the embodiment of violence, and Danuski imagines himself getting crushed. Almandra decides to help out the poor salaryman and shows him how negotiations are done. She asks for the great and powerful Certerius to hear what she has to say, and Danuski's relieved that she can act as a mediator. However, his hopeful optimism goes straight out the window when Almandra just starts screaming at Terius. It's pretty clear that she's a terrible negotiator, and Terius just goes back in his room. Almandra reveals that negotiations with the Minotaurs were going well at first, but for some reason Terius started refusing everything. Almandra kept trying to complete negotiations day after day, but Terius just kept saying nay over and over again. On top of that, he tried bringing in a bunch of trash to throw around his room. Terius makes a bunch of noise as he thrashes about in his room, and Almandra simply leaves the rest to Danuski. Our boy is terrified as the giant beast continues to thrash about, and he decides to go for a walk. He seriously doubts that he will even be able to talk to Terius, and he can even hear Almandra putting him down after failing. Just then, Danuski strangely finds himself in a bar. He asks for the usual and thinks about how it's impossible to negotiate with someone who doesn't want to. At that moment, Danuski realizes that he encountered a similar situation before. A client kept telling him no, and Danuski was ready to give up on the negotiation. However, once they looked eye to eye, they finally understood each other. Danuski now has a newfound confidence and assures that he can settle things. We then see that Almandra is reporting back to the Demon Lord. She doubts that an Otherworlder will be able to complete negotiations, but the Demon Lord gives Danuski some more time. Almandra goes to check on him, but she is shocked to find Danuski digging through the trash. Danuski explains that he wants to have a proper conversation with the Minotaur, but Almandra thinks it's impossible. The beast has a major attitude and he has no interest in making a deal. She is shocked, however, when Danuski says that she's just giving up too early, and negotiations aren't going well because there must be a misunderstanding somewhere. The only way to reconcile things is to make eye contact with the other person while building a relationship of trust. Our boy confidently tells Almandra to watch him as he completes the negotiation, and she is stunned to see his transformation. The next day, Almandra barges into the room and is shocked to see that it's a complete mess. She fears that they had a battle, but Danuski appears, and she blames him for making a mess. She wonders where Terius is, and Danuski reveals that he's currently making the pact with the Demon Lord. Almandra is completely confused, so Danuski clarifies that the Minotaurs and the demon army will finally be allies. Almandra refuses to believe that Danuski was able to complete the negotiations in just one night, especially because Terius has been so difficult this entire time. Danuski explains that you must know yourself so you can know your enemy, but she has no clue what he's talking about. He clarifies even further by pointing out how Almandra thought that Terius was refusing negotiations. She thought he was because he just kept saying nay to everything. Danuski explains that the Minotaur actually thought the talks were going well. What helped Danuski figure out the problem was his experience from someone telling him no over and over again. No matter what Danuski tried, he couldn't convince this corporate boss to agree to the negotiations. The more he discussed details, the more emotional the guy became. It wasn't until Danuski was ready to give up, but the guy decided to shake his hand. Turns out that the guy just liked to have lively conversations and wanted to hear as much detail as he could. In some countries and cultures, being emotional and passionate is good. That is where the misunderstanding came from. When Danuski looked Terius in the eyes and really talked it out, he found out everything. Terius was just being passionate, but Almandra took it as him wanting to fight. That is why he got even more upset when she threatened to end the negotiations because of his behavior. Also, it's common courtesy in the Minotaur tribe to bring hay into the room when staying over. The kind Minotaurs do this to make sure they don't break the house's bed since they have such big bodies. His hay was mistaken for garbage, so Terius had to sleep on the floor and he was sleep-deprived. He was really frustrated, so he couldn't convey his feelings in a way that Almandra understands. Almandra realizes that she failed to make an effort to understand Terius, but Terius takes part of the blame as well. The two apologize to each other, and Terius thanks Danuski for everything. As they say goodbye, the Demon Lord explains that the successful negotiation was thanks to Danuski's talent, his ability to pick up on things that people normally wouldn't. The Demon Lord says that Danuski passed the test, and welcomes him as a new member of the 4 elite generals. Almandra no longer doubts the Salaryman, and the Demon Lord tells him to hold out his arm. The Demon Lord gives him a bracelet and says that it will serve as proof that he is one of the great generals. The Demon Lord has full trust in him, and tells Danuski to do what he thinks is best, and to do what he believes is right. After Danuski thanks the Demon Lord, Almandra raises her arm to him. She's furious when he doesn't know what she's doing, so she tells him to raise his arm back. Danuski does, and the two formally say their titles to each other. Almandra explains that this is how her clan welcomes new friends, but she goes back to her old self. As she tells him that she hasn't fully acknowledged him yet. The two run off together, and the Demon Lord thinks about how a group that complements each other will also grow stronger together. Unfortunately, his army is still immature and incomplete. However, Danuski will be their light, and his brightness will lead the army so they can truly shine. Later, Danuski still can't believe that he was brought to a new world, but he's even more amazed to really have his own office. He was brought to a small country, but the chain of command and the Demon Lord's army is organized well. Danuski has a lot of anxiety about his situation, but the Demon Lord was the only one who's actually ever acknowledged him. Because of this, Danuski has no choice but to do his best. He goes to let in some fresh air to start his day, but just ends up getting a face full of terrifying bats. Danuski plans to take his new job very seriously, so this means behaving with proper etiquette. To accomplish this, he will have to formally introduce himself to the other generals. Sylphid is first on the list, but Danuski is told that Sylphid has been absent for quite some time now. Her assistant Belinda says she will pass the message along and shuts the door on our boy. Danuski refuses to be discouraged, so he moves on to the next general, but Almandra interrupts him. The Demon Lord has summoned him because there's a new work order. This time it's a merger negotiation with the Ogre tribe. The Demon Lord's army is an emerging force, so in order for them to stand equal to the greater powers, they need to cooperate with the demi-humans. Amongst the demi-humans in the area, the Ogre tribe is especially influential. They have a military force that is just as powerful as the Demon Lords, and it acts as a leader to the surrounding races. However, because of this, they are weary of the Demon Lord's army. An alliance would be very beneficial for the Demon Lord, but the ogres could become troublesome enemies as well. The Demon Lord wants Danuski to really understand, so he compares it to a merger negotiation with the competing business. Before Danuski's arrival, there was no being suited for this task because of how important it is. However, the Demon Lord is certain that Danuski is capable of this task. He instructs the Salaryman to demonstrate his ability to the fullest, so he can convince the ogres. Danuski is pleased when Almandra offers to escort him, but she says it's only because she worries when she's not with him. Before they leave, Danuski would like to meet with Gnome, the other general. Gnome leads the demi-human forces in the Demon Lord's army, and she might have valuable information because the ogres are also demi-humans. Almandra refuses to tag along and says that she needs to make the preparations for their travels anyway. Outside, Danuski is amazed when he sees some training going on. Gnome compliments her troops on their rapid improvement, and she gives them a break. Danuski can't believe how organized the demi-humans are, and he can clearly see how their morale is very high. Gnome being able to command such a large group is also very impressive. Danuski finally gets to introduce himself, and he explains that the Ogre tribe will be his next target. Gnome explains that their chief is a really tough opponent because of his bravery and boldness. He is seen as a ruthless dictator, but Gnome says that Danuski will soon see for himself. Gnome takes a very serious tone as she tells Danuski to get something out of her face, and her subordinates become uneasy when a demon is nearby. Danuski has no clue what she's talking about and is shocked to find that a very angry Almandra is behind him. She says that she's worried about him, but quickly corrects herself to say that his slow but was taking too long. Gnome tells Danuski to get that thing out of her face again, but this just makes the girls argue. Later, Danuski and Almandra are told to wait for the Ogre Chief's permission outside their gate. Tensions are high, and Danuski realizes that this is just like his previous job. It's clear that the negotiation game has already begun before even getting to the table. Danuski explains to Almandra that throwing off the other party by making them wait is a common negotiation tactic. It's of utmost importance to remain calm, but Almandra is tired of being toyed with. Just then, the two are allowed to enter and Almandra tells the salaryman to not let his guard down. The ogres are an exceptional race, and their power is comparable to that of the demon army. Almandra reminds him that their biggest concern will be the chief himself, named Ogier. Danuski can only wonder what kind of beast the chief is, and they enter his room. Ogier is fearsome looking, and he interrupts Almandra's introduction. The rude ogre calls her a wench and tells her to stop yapping so much. He declares that as long as he lives, he won't allow her to speak, respond, move or do anything at all. Almandra silences herself, and Danuski is shocked to see his short-tempered friend holding herself back. Almandra is the next to be shocked however as Ogier assumes that they are here to surrender to his army. The cold-blooded chief accepts their surrender, but only if they bring him the demon lord's head. Almandra is ready to go off on this guy, but Danuski just manages to calm her down. Ogier continues with his insulting suggestions, but luckily Danuski steps forward. He calmly thanks Ogier and says that they will take some time to think about the offer. Outside, Almandra lets out her anger and cusses out the chief. Danuski tries to calm her down and he explains that this is what Ogier wants. His aim is to make them angry so the negotiations fall apart. Almandra is shocked by Danuski's foresight and he explains that Ogier has no intention of negotiating. He also wants to avoid conflict so he says antagonizing things. That way, if the deal falls through, then it won't be his fault. He will be able to blame the negotiators that the demon lord sent and not take any blame himself. Danuski reveals that he is just as upset after hearing how insulting Ogier was to their army, but he knows that it would put the demon lord at a disadvantage if he showed his frustration. If the two of them mess up now, then the ogres could use it as an excuse to ally with other nations. Potentially, they could even attack the demon army. It's clear that there's no room for negotiations right now, and trying to force it might harm the relationship. Almandra apologizes for losing her cool, but Danuski says that he's glad she was there. If she wasn't, then he would have been the one to rage out. Unfortunately, they still don't know what to do about Ogier's unwillingness to negotiate. Just then, the girl from earlier introduces herself as Ogier's daughter, named Alyalu. Almandra assumes that she's there to fight, but Alyalu reveals that she actually wants to drag her father down from his throne. Alyalu takes them to a food cellar and reveals that the ogre tribe has run into financial problems. Their tribe no longer has the influence they once had, and some of their people are even struggling to find food. Almandra is shocked to see the true genius of our boy, as he already had an idea that this was happening. He realized that something was off when he saw that the guard's armor seemed dilapidated and the castle was dim and lifeless. This is something he saw in his old world when large companies were on the decline. The top-down management starts done by one person works well because the chain of command is simple. However, once it breaks down, it's hard to fix. Alyalu acknowledges that is exactly what's happening. The only way to rebuild the failing tribe is to rely on the demon army, but Ogier refuses to listen. To make things even worse, the chief is very ill. He tries to put on a strong front, but he is no longer in his prime. Alyalu knows that things would get much worse if her father passes, so she desperately wants something to be done. Danuski, seemingly a different man now, explains that while Alyalu has good intentions, her actions are flawed. He says that a member of an organization should not easily talk about internal affairs. Danuski warns her to be more careful, and Alyalu thanks him for worrying about her. Of course, Almandra doesn't like this little conversation, and Alyalu says that she only told Danuski because she could tell he is trustworthy. Alyalu decides to just go for it, so she asks Danuski to marry her and become the new chief of the ogre tribe. This makes Almandra even more upset, but Alyalu can tell that Danuski is the only one who can save their tribe. Everyone in the clan is hard-headed and influenced by her father. Their marriage is the only solution, but Almandra says that they will take some time to think about it. Back home, Danuski thinks about how his second job is already a mess. Just then he finds himself back at the bar. This time Almandra is there and she argues with everyone about who the strongest wild animal is. She thinks it's the lion, but the bartender says it's the gorilla. The two go back and forth about which is cooler, and Almandra says that a group of lions being called a pride is the coolest. The words group and pride seem to give Danuski an idea, and he finds himself back in the castle. Being in the bar has given him confidence once again, and he declares that it's time to settle the account. The next morning, Almandra is pleased to hear that our boy has come up with a solution. She gets ready to head back to the ogre tribe, but Danuski reveals that they will be going somewhere else. If all goes according to his plan, the ogre chief himself will be the one to set up the negotiation. 1 week later, Ogre surprisingly calls our two heroes to meet with him. Danuski pretends to be clueless, but Ogre tells him to drop the act. He demands to know why the other tribes just joined the demon army, and our boy lets out a sly smile. It turns out that Danuski's plan was to simply recruit the other races first. Just as he thought, the other tribes were in trouble as well because they used to rely on the ogre tribe before they became weak. Because of this, Danuski decided to speak with all the regions surrounding the ogre tribe. This isn't Danuski's first time doing something like this either. In his old world, he learned that trying to approach a large company through the front gate like an idiot would get you kicked out. Instead, he approached small and medium companies first. He gave them his sales pitch and got them to buy his products. After finding success there, the big companies finally began to buy themselves. This is because they didn't want the small companies to have new products while they carried the old ones. Danuski knew that getting the surrounding tribes to join the demon army would force the prideful ogre to do something. The first part of Danuski's plan is a complete success, and now it's time to close the deal. The chief expresses his frustration as he declares that this area is ruled by the ogre tribe. He's completely beside himself, and that's exactly what Danuski wanted. Ogre is becoming more emotional and less logical. Danuski explains that negotiations are lost by those who lose their cool first. Danuski keeps his cool and explains that the demon lord wasn't the only one involved in the other tribe's recruitment. It was also the ogre tribe. Ogre is furious as he did no such thing, but Danuski reveals that it was actually thanks to Alyalu. She took it upon herself to arrange negotiations with the surrounding tribes. Ogre can't understand, so Alyalu explains that their top priority should be the lives and the future of the demihumans. The only way out of all their problems is to rely on the demon army's help. Ogre tries to continue his stubborn ways, but Alyalu says that she has always looked up to him. Unfortunately, the ogre chief who was once invincible is now old and ill, so now they must accept help from the demon lord. Danuski can tell that he's still hesitant, so he says that instead of having the ogre be the demon lord's subordinate, they can just form an alliance. The two are practically the same thing because the demon lord is a fair leader, but Danuski knows that the wording is important to the prideful ogre. Danuski's plan has gone perfectly, so Ogre says he will take some time to consider their offer. Almandra wonders if this is really a good thing, but Danuski can tell that Ogre already knows his answer. He just needs the time to say it. Everyone leaves and Ogre is proud to see how much his daughter has grown. A few days later, Almandra informs Danuski that Ogre has asked to speak with her, so they can finalize the agreement. She sees that Danuski is overwhelmed, and he explains that the demon lord has issued another order. He wants Danuski to select a direct underling, but the salaryman doesn't know who to choose. He can't tell much from the resumes, so Almandra suggests that he just trusts his intuition. He wishes he could just pick Almandra, and she sheepishly says that they just met. Just then, Alyalu arrives as a representative of the ogre tribe, and she thanks Danuski for helping the two tribes form an alliance. Since then, her father has even been delegating work to the most capable people in their tribe. The ogre tribe is doing much better now, and she offers to repay Danuski any way she can. Danuski comes up with the brilliant idea to have her work for him, but this upsets Almandra greatly. Alyalu happily agrees, but this makes Almandra call Danuski her rival, and she says that she has no intention of being buddy-buddy with him. Danuski is at least pleased to see that the demon lord's army has expanded a great deal after all his work, but it's not all good. With every big return, there's always a risk that comes with it. A couple of days pass and Danuski is working in his office as usual, when Alyalu comes in and tells him she has reached an agreement with the bear tribe like he asked her to. So, as long as he meets their conditions, they will support the demon army. Danuski is glad to hear that things went well with the bear tribe, but there's something else Alyalu wants to tell him. She heard that Danuski is going to be rewarded for all the hard work he has been putting in, and the award ceremony is going to be held soon, so she'll tell him about it after his lunch break is over. Danuski has no idea what he's going to be awarded, but with how the Demon Lord treats him, he can be sure that it will be better than a pizza party. Just then, Almandra comes into Danuski's office with some lunch for them to share as they always do, but while Danuski loves eating with Almandra, he hates the fact that the only food available in the demon army is bland porridge. He understands that there are limitations to the logistics of feeding an entire army, but he still wishes he could at least have some meat to go with the porridge. Almandra hears Danuski complaining and she has the perfect solution, so if Danuski wants meat, then they are going to go get it from the source. Danuski really doesn't like the idea of going hunting just so he can eat some meat, but that's not the only reason Almandra brought him out here. She actually received a request from the demi-human tribes living nearby, asking her to exterminate a magical beast that has been attacking them in this forest. So far, 5 orcs have been killed by this thing, and Danuski thinks that's terrible, but Almandra sees it differently. It's perfectly natural for the weak to be eaten by the strong, and normally it would be the orc tribe's job to defend themselves from any threats like this. But the beast in question is far too strong for them to defeat, and Almandra can't let the orc tribe be slaughtered, so she agreed to handle it for them. Speaking of which, Almandra notices some mushrooms grown under a tree, and from what she was told, all the orcs who got eaten were attacked while picking these mushrooms, since they are a valuable ingredient. Therefore, the magical beast must be camping somewhere around here. If they wait long enough, then it's sure to attack. Evidently, they didn't have to wait long since the boar shows up behind them almost immediately, so Almandra tells Danuski to run for cover while she handles this. She jumps into the air and kicks the boar's face into the ground. But in retaliation, the boar starts using its horns to throw rocks at Almandra, and although she can easily dodge them, Danuski can't, so he's freaking out. The boar starts smashing through trees and is heading straight for Danuski, but before he could get hurt, Almandra lands a clean punch to the boar's stomach. From what he can see, it's clear at Danuski that Almandra is strong, but so far none of her strikes have been fatal. It wouldn't matter if this was just a regular fight, but right now their goal is to hunt this thing, so what she's lacking is killing power. The boar has sharp tusks to attack with, so a single mistake on Almandra's end would be fatal. However, her blows only cause blunt force trauma, so she's gonna end this quickly. Then Danuski thinks she needs a weapon. He was right about Almandra's blows not being strong enough to kill this thing as she is now, but she's been holding back so far. She doesn't like using her true power because it takes a long time to recover from the effects, but she won't be able to kill this thing otherwise. The boar tries charging at her again, but this time Almandra is able to stop it with one hand. She could easily kill it with a single punch right now, but that might ruin its meat, so instead she picks it up and snaps its neck. Now that the boar is dead, Almandra tells Danuski they can eat meat now, but honestly, Danuski has lost his appetite. They drag the boar's body to the orc village so they can show the villagers that the boar has been dealt with, and all the villagers are really grateful for what Almandra did, as well as impressed that she was able to take it down on her own. Almandra is really enjoying all this praise, but that aside, it's rare to get so much meat, so Almandra invites the entire village to share the boar with her. The villagers are all excited, but Danuski can't believe they are actually okay with eating boar meat when that thing was one evolution cycle away from being their next-door neighbor. However, he's even more surprised when he hears Almandra say she's going to cook the meat. He asks her if she's really serious about cooking, so Almandra offers to give him a taste of her homemade delicacy. Danuski is actually getting excited since Almandra is making it sound so good, but when he asks her how she plans to cook, she just chucks a fireball at it. The result is this lump of charred flesh, and you can tell by the look on Danuski's face that this shit is straight trash. Almandra tells him to just give it a try because it's better than it looks, but Danuski takes a bite and it tastes just as bad as it looks. This shit tastes like someone poured hot tar in his mouth, and he'd honestly rather starve than have to suffer through another bite of this. Almandra tells him it's rude to insult someone's cooking like that, but Danuski tells her it's rude to call what she just did cooking. He has been enduring the culture shock of living in a new world so far, but this is too much for him to handle, so he asks if everyone can let him handle the cooking from now on. Once Danuski is done cooking the meat, Almandra takes one bite and realizes this actually tastes amazing, so she asks Danuski what he did. He explains that first he soaked the pork in water to get all the blood out, and then he slow roasted it over a fire to remove all the excess fat in there. And finally, adding it to a soup helps get rid of any bad smells. He offers to teach the villagers if they want to learn, and the villagers are glad that one of the demon generals is being so thoughtful, but Almandra doesn't think it's necessary for someone as high-ranking as Danuski to spend time teaching villagers how to cook. Danuski tells her she's wrong because his job is to improve the demon army, and a big step in the development of any civilization is their culinary advancement. It's natural for people who eat meat often to figure out different ways to improve the taste, but because meat is so rare here, no one can afford to experiment with it. In other words, this country is poor and lacking in knowledge. It sounds harsh when he puts it that way, but Almandra can't argue since he's correct. This country is mostly barren, and compared to the surrounding nations, it is pretty weak. But that's exactly why they have to work hard to make a change as part of the Big Four. Since they are done here, Almandra suggests that they should return to the castle, but Danuski doesn't think that's a good idea since it's already dark out. However, Almandra tells him it won't be a problem since she can illuminate their path with this fireball. She is really proud of her magic prowess since it's an ability unique to demons, and Danuski is quite impressed. It also makes sense why demi-humans who can't use magic train day in and out to become effective fighters, while demons like Almandra can rely solely on their magic, but he thinks Almandra could stand to improve her combat techniques a little. For instance, even though her attack power rises dramatically when she uses her true power to transform her body, it takes a while for her body to recover afterwards. So he suggests that she should bring a weapon with her to help with combat next time. He also suggests that she should wear armor that covers more of her body. But after he says this, Almandra stops dead in her tracks and puts out her light. She understands that Danuski may be right, but his focus on efficiency is insulting to her, so she's way too mad to be around him right now. She ditches Danuski in the forest, and Danuski is left wondering why she got so mad. But before that, he's almost guaranteed to get eaten if he stays out in this forest, so he runs back to the orc village for safety. The next morning, Danuski meets with the Demon Lord to give a report on the mission, and the Demon Lord congratulates him on his success. But he heard that Almandra returned last night, while Danuski only arrived this morning while being escorted by the orcs, so he wants to know if something bad happened between him and Almandra. Danuski breaks down and says he's not worthy of being one of the demon army's generals. The Demon Lord tells him to calm down and explain what happened, so Danuski tells him everything. The Demon Lord can tell that Danuski inadvertently offended Almandra, but what's important now is that they make amends for the sake of the demon army, so he officially orders Danuski to find a way to make up with Almandra. But that's easier said than done. He recalls how proud Almandra was when she said that demons are the only ones who can use magic, but there has to be more to it than that, so he starts reading a demon history book to see if he can figure something out. He soon finds a chapter talking about how a toned physique is essential for a demon's magic power, which is why demons take great pride in their bodies and often wear extremely revealing clothes. Danuski now understands why Almandra got so upset, because when he told her that it would be more efficient to wear armor that covers her body more, he was basically rejecting her pride as a demon. But even if he knows the reason she got mad, he has no idea how he's going to repair their relationship. Meanwhile, over in the castle, Alyalu has just finished chopping up the firewood for the day, and she's about to go handle her next task, but she is shocked to see a menacing wall of death in front of her. Almandra is really upset about what happened with Danuski, so when she sees Alyalu, she runs to her, crying that Danuski hates her and refuses to praise her body. Alyalu has no idea what's going on at first, but after Almandra explains what happened, she realizes where the misunderstanding might have come from. She tells Almandra that as a human, Danuski's values are a lot different from theirs. In particular, Alyalu knows that Danuski doesn't think exposing your body is a good thing, but Almandra can't believe it since she's been exposing her body to him for weeks, and he never complained about it. Alyalu explains that Danuski probably just thought Almandra was some kind of exhibitionist, so he never questioned it. Upon hearing this, Almandra suddenly realizes that if Danuski was uncomfortable with her exposed body, then all those gestures of bodily affection she had shown him probably did come off as some sort of deviant behavior. She's so embarrassed and angry at herself for ditching Danuski in the forest that she starts smashing her face into the floor, but Alyalu begs her to stop because the floor can't take much more of this. Almandra asks Alyalu for advice on what she should do now since she got mad at Danuski for no reason. So Alyalu tells her about a discussion she had with him when she first became his assistant. He told Alyalu that he wanted her to stay true to her desires no matter what, because he wanted her to feel free to talk about any troubles she had so they could come to a solution together. Regardless of any misunderstandings, Alyalu is sure Almandra can make up with Danuski as long as they talk it out. Danuski and Almandra eventually find each other in the castle stairwell, and they've both got something really important to say, so Almandra tells Danuski that she's not a hoe, she just wanted him to compliment her body. While at the same time, Danuski tells her that he thinks her body is hot. They both take a moment to process what the other said, and since it seems like they are both on the same page, Danuski apologizes to Almandra. He didn't know much about demons and hadn't realized that what he said would be insulting to her. Almandra accepts his apology and also apologizes to Danuski, because it wasn't his fault that he didn't know about demon culture, and even if she was mad, she shouldn't have left him in the middle of the forest alone. Danuski didn't nearly die because of that, so Almandra is really guilty, but since he ended up being okay, Danuski says he forgives her. He's glad they were able to make up, and now that they've gotten the chance to learn a little about one another, Danuski thinks they can become great partners, although he still doesn't realize that Almandra interprets the word partner as a marriage proposal. Later on, the Demon Lord gathers all his subordinates because he has a special announcement to make. After forming alliances with the various tribes, his demon army has grown far stronger than it used to be, and this is all thanks to the diligent work of his newest general, Danuski. So in light of his achievements, the Demon Lord is presenting him with this magic stone. Danuski feels greatly honored to receive such a valuable stone, but he cannot accept it because he didn't do the work alone. None of this would have been possible if he didn't have Almandra by his side, so he walks up to her, gets down on one knee and asks Almandra to accept the stone with him. Almandra is happy, but she freaks out that Danuski is doing this in public with so many people watching. He's not aware of this, but presenting a magic stone to a girl is quite literally the definition of a marriage proposal in this world. So he just proposed to her in front of all the demon army leaders, and the only reason she didn't immediately accept is because she's embarrassed with everyone around. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more episode.